Hello, I'm Susie Cater. I'm Corporate Counsel for the California Association of Realtors. You are watching an instructional video about the Director's Review of Professional Standards Matters. Here to help me today are two of California's top realtors, Debbie Maxwell and Don Blythe.
Okay, let me start right off the bat. How exactly is a Director's Review conducted?
Well, 3 people from the Board of Directors are selected to review in 4 distinct situations. First, they review decisions of the Grievance Committee. Second, findings and recommendations from a disciplinary hearing when there has been a request for review. Third, findings and recommendations from a disciplinary hearing when there has been no request for review. And fourth, an arbitration award when there has been a request for review.
So how does the whole director thing work?
There are 2 types of reviews. The first is a paper review. That means that no parties attend and the directors just review the documents.
We have one matter to review today. The Grievance Committee dismissed a complaint and the complainant requested a director's review.
Wow, this is an interesting one. 2 realtors were having a loud discussion outside their office. One realtor got heated, mouthed off using some harsh language, and the assaulted realtor filed a complaint.
Yeah, according to the Grievance Committee, there is nothing in the Code of Ethics about the use of foul language, so there are no grounds for a disciplinary action against the offending realtor.
But don't we need to hear from the complainant?
Not with a paper review. The only thing we're reviewing today is the Grievance Committee's decision. The only thing we see is exactly what the Grievance Committee saw.
Since there is no possible violation of the Code of Ethics, it seems to me we should uphold the Grievance Committee's dismissal of the complaint.
While I don't think it's cool the realtor was a foul-mouthed hothead, I do agree we uphold the Grievance Committee.
Is that the only time that there's a paper review?
No. The directors also conduct a paper review if there is no request for a review after a disciplinary hearing. That is because directors have to ratify all recommendations after a disciplinary hearing, even if there's been no request.
We have a finding of violation and a recommendation of discipline from an ethics hearing panel.
Don't we need the entire file?
No, all we need is a findings of fact and the panel's recommendation of discipline. Our job here is to make sure that those findings of fact support both the violation and the recommendation of discipline.
According to the findings of fact, Realtor Wilson lied to his client, Mrs. Johnson, by inflating the market value of her house in order to get the listing.
The panel members have recommended a fine.
Do you think the complaint is true, Colette?
It doesn't matter whether we think it's true or not. We have to accept the panel's finding of fact as true. They heard all the arguments and they deliberated after the hearing.
Colette, can't we send this complaint back to the panel if we find lack of due process or if the discipline is excessive?
Yes, and if we find the discipline is excessive, we can send it back with a recommendation of modification, or we can lessen the punishment. However, in this case, I'm inclined to agree with the panel. And if we find there's been a violation of due process, we can send it back for a new hearing with a new panel.
I agree. A fine isn't too severe for what he did.
You know, Sandy, after looking over the findings of fact, I agree. The fine is appropriate.
Susie, I have a burning question about that paper review.
What's that, Don?
Why weren't the complainant and the respondent in the room?
Well, because there was no request for review. This is a paper review because Wilson didn't challenge his fine. The time lapsed for a request for review to be made, so the directors had to ratify the hearing panel's recommended discipline. Only then is the discipline final.
Then a director's hearing is held only when somebody requests a review.
Right. A Director's Review hearing is a full due process hearing with 3 impartial panel members. There is an alternate who sits on the sidelines in case he or she is needed.
That's amazing. So a realtor who's found in violation can request a review, like he could say he was denied due process?
Absolutely. If someone requests a review, they get one.
And the directors on the panel can't have any personal or professional connections with the person who's being reviewed. The directors in a review have the same conflict of interest restraints as a hearing panel member.
Can attorneys attend the review?
Of course.
Would the directors also continue the hearing if the complainant or respondent was sick?
Well, yes, but remember, if someone is chronically sick and continues to cancel their hearings just to stall, the hearing will eventually be held without them. Let's see how the directors handle a request for review of an arbitration award. You will notice that because this is a hearing, there are 4 people in the room. The 4th person is Dexter. He is the alternate. As in the other hearings, the alternate cannot speak during the hearing. He or she is present to fill in for a panel member should the panel member be unable to finish the hearing. Also, it's important for director panel members to remember that they are in a hearing and must always
Sandy.
behave professionally.
This isn't a powder room. Good afternoon. We're here today to review the arbitration hearing between Maddie Bond and Tim Smith.
Once Colette opens the hearing, Maddie and Tim will be questioned, then their witnesses, who wait outside, will be called in one at a time. And like any good court case, there may be cross-examination. The only evidence that the directors hear is that which deals with the basis for the request for review. For instance, the only ground for a request for review of arbitration award is violation of due process. Therefore, the only evidence the directors hear is that which bears on the claim that due process has been violated.
Well, during my hearing, one of the panel members got sick and left. The alternate then sat in on the panel, and I think that is a violation of due process.
But why aren't they talking about the fact that Tim took another realtor's commission?
Because the only issues the directors hear must pertain to Tim's right to due process.
That's right, Debbie.
The directors can't decide to award the agent who lost the commission more money?
No, the directors don't decide the merits of the case. They are only concerned right now about a possible violation of due process. The chair of the original hearing panel must testify.
And can you tell us exactly what happened at the arbitration hearing?
Joan was the alternate. Kit had a medical emergency, had to leave, and she replaced him immediately. Joan hadn't been challenged by the parties before the hearing and was therefore approved to sit on the panel. She was there the entire hearing. There was no violation of due process.
Let's see now what the directors do in their deliberation.
Even though Tim claims there was a violation of due process, from the evidence presented here, I don't see any proof that due process was violated.
I agree. I don't see any reason to send this back for another hearing.
Count me in.
We'll affirm the award.
Do all the directors have to agree?
No, majority rules.
Well, are the review hearings for a disciplinary matter run the same way as a review for an arbitration award?
Yes, they're run exactly the same way, except that when the review is of a disciplinary matter, the directors decide if the sanctions recommended by the hearing panel are too severe.
What would be an example of too severe?
Well, say someone is expelled for violation and the directors decide that suspension is sufficient punishment. They can reduce the discipline. On the other hand, if someone is suspended and the directors feel the agent should be expelled, they cannot increase the punishment.
Can they send it back for a rehearing with a recommendation for a more severe punishment?
They can. They can also decide to affirm the panel's recommendation.
But there are particular issues that the director panel deals with, right?
Yes. The issues on review are different from the actual disciplinary hearing. There are 3 grounds for requesting a review: misapplication or misinterpretation of the rule, excessive discipline, and violation of due process.
If I were on a panel and I went home and told my wife about it, I would be violating the confidentiality rule for the hearing?
That's correct.
Huh. So once the directors have had their say at a review, then that's the end of the hearing and review.
At least for the Association of Realtors. Until next time, this is Susie Cater.
Debbie Maxwell.
And Don Blythe.
Goodbye.